Hey everybody, good afternoon. Happy Friday, March 27th. And looks like we're getting through the month, almost to April. And I appreciate so much y'all being here. This is going to be a little bit of a different live stream, and I think some people will just as soon watch it as a replay, since there's not too much in terms of interaction that is really going to be, an option. This is going to be more of an informative one, but I've been trying to do this in a bigger, broader way, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do the bigger presentation that I want to. And so I'm just going to do what I can today. This is basically a way of saying to those of you who are thinking about doing some kind of presentation with me, most likely a deconversion video where you talk about your escape from Christianity. But how do you do that? How do you prepare for it? And everyone's going to be different, but I do have some things that I've thought about for many years and some things I've picked up on that I think will be helpful to people. And so I'm hopeful that for those that do choose to watch this, again, I'm sure just as likely on the replay as for the live stream, I do hope it helps you. So I wanted to start as well just quickly saying thank you to Shell D for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you so much for your support. I very much need it to stay at the channel, to be doing this full time. I am so excited. There's some crazy cool stuff coming up soon. And I've got a lot of live streams coming, a lot of interviews coming. Just good stuff, really good stuff. So I hope you're doing well. And I know that there's some people who have reached out to me about doing an interview, and some people probably are waiting for the right time. And I just want to say, as I've said before, don't feel any pressure. Don't feel rushed. The time will come when it's right for you. And when it comes, it comes. When it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just you have to know what's right based on your family, your friends, your job, your heart. You don't have to have anybody pressuring you to say, get in this fight. I would say I hope you will at some point, but there's a time and a place, and you'll know when it's right. So do what you have to do to protect yourself and your loved ones. But for those of you that are considering it, they're saying, yeah, let's get this thing going. Either schedule it or let's at least, talk about it and figure out how to move forward. There's some things I have learned. And I think some people probably think it's as simple as you just get on camera, which I need a little more lighting. Some people think it's just, get on camera and do it. And some people probably do just that, and it's very minimal. And some people probably get away with it, and it's okay. But other people, they do that, and it doesn't work out so well. So we're going to go over some things that will help you. I do think that these, they're going to be random. I'm not going to try to keep them super organized. I'm just going to hit these notes as I do, and we'll go from there. But for me, when I'm scheduling, I often will tell people that are sort of new to this, where they've never done it before. They have no social media channel. They're not doing any content creation. Those people where this is totally like, I just don't get on camera much, or maybe you get on camera for work, but not for this stuff. You might want to give it some thought in terms of preparing for your interview, meaning you might want to give yourself at least a month. You don't have to if you're like, no, I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's just do it next week. That's totally cool. But often when I first connect with someone, I don't know them. I've never heard of them before. And I think that they're new to social media in the sense of proclaiming their deconversion story. I ask them to think about it for a little bit. Just get some notes written down. And for anyone that's on the fence about when to do it, I would say, don't even worry about when. Just one of the ways is when you feel prepared, and preparation often includes just writing down notes. So write down notes. And I will say sometimes I have to reschedule. I'm a single dad of 4 kids. My life is sometimes chaotic, as is everyone's, and for different reasons. Sometimes I have to reschedule. So I would ask for your grace. Usually I don't reschedule more than once. Like if we scheduled it for Monday and we said, let's do it Wednesday, usually it's Wednesday. But there are occasionally times when I've had to reschedule several times. Most people are pretty gracious and they say, no, I get it. Like life's crazy. Some people get very upset about that. If you're the kind of person where that would upset you and they'd be like, nah, I'm not doing this unless we do it within the first time or maybe the second. I totally won't be offended if you feel like you just need to be more passive about sharing your stuff on my channel. My life's just back and forth sometimes. There are weeks where it is totally predictable, and there are weeks where it is not. Typically, my interviews, when I chat with people, I try to get them on about 10 to 15 minutes before we start recording. And we usually can knock out any technical issues and just jump right in when the time is right. I ask people to, for that matter, to block off about 2 to 3 hours. So if we have 15, 20 minutes before the video starts, and then 1.5 to 2 hours for it, and then when we stop recording, at that point, we might want to chat for another 10 minutes about how it went, or just, shoot the breeze as friends. And at this point, I'm doing 99%, hopefully, of my interviews on live stream. So that means that 10 to 15 minute window of preparation is a little bit more important, because if we can't fix the problems within that 10 to 15 minute window, then we can't go live when we've scheduled it. So now if you're just a few minutes late, said you do it at 1 o'clock and you do it at 1:03 or 1:05, people will forgive you. But if we're looking at 1:15, 1:20, that's a problem. Excuse me. So the live streams are good in a couple ways. Number one, you're not waiting for me to edit it. Editing can be a wonderful thing, but if it's live, then it's live. It's out there. You can invite people to watch you live. You can certainly get the link and share it after it's done, but it's done. You can also, in the live streams, have people ask you questions while they're watching it. So there's some benefits to it. The benefits of pre-recorded videos, which I will still leave that open for anyone that says, no, I really don't want to do live. It's too much pressure. That's fine. We'll record it. I'll edit it, and I'll post it within probably a week or 2, month at the latest, most likely. I try real hard to stay up on those, but again, when they're live, because I'm doing so many videos now, I'm trying to get to 4 a day, like ASAP. It's a lot harder when I've got to go back and like re-listen. And when I edit videos, I do a lot of things to it, as I think it deserves. But I edit the audio, the video, put it all back together. Audio for each person, video for each person, put it back together in one clean assembled file, then actually listen to it. If somebody says like, hey, scratch, I didn't mean to say it that way, let's start over. It's okay, sure, start over. And I take that part out like it never happened. But it allows you to restate things that you feel like you misspoke on, or you have to be aware of things like, are you going to clear your throat all the time? I've got a mute button. You see me clear my throat. It happens, but you need to just be aware of that. With a live stream, you can't just walk away and say, hey, I'm going to use the restroom for 5 minutes, or I'm going to make a cup of tea because my throat hurts. Like, you have to think about that stuff in advance. You have to be prepared to kind of stay for the hour and a half. Take time on that note beforehand to clear your throat. Sometimes I just use like nice warm water, or warm water with lemonade. You want to be careful about using salt water in case it could dry you out. But lemon water helps me a lot, and of course tea, warm tea with honey. I drink a nice green tea with honey and love it. But I use Zoom for my pre-recorded ones, but I'm not using that pretty much at this point. So use StreamYard for the live streams that connects right to YouTube, to YouTube. And I would ask that you, when you plan on connecting, that you do it on a computer, like a regular computer or a laptop. If you're using a cell phone or a tablet, number one, sometimes Zoom, which is the old program I used, if we do it that way, we're just recording it, Zoom will crop you in like a square instead of a 16:9 landscape video. But in addition, even if we're doing a live stream and it's not cropping your video weird through StreamYard, then you still have the issue of your battery wearing out, people texting you. Maybe you put it on airplane mode or something, and you think that it's not going to make noise, but then it does, and you're trying to scramble to figure out. So you're trying to figure out like what's the setting to make this stop beeping. If you just use a regular computer, that's done. You do need to use earbuds or headphones of some kind. You cannot have speakers in the room, because that will create a sound loop. Yeah, in other words, you will hear me coming from my microphone through your speakers into the room, but my voice in the room will come right back through your microphone back in or looping, and so forth. That's truly awful. Like, you can't wing it and hope it works out. You have to have earbuds or headphones. I have heard of people that have a microphone that has a really, really good like digital way of detecting that happening, and it cancels it out. It's not worth the risk. Just use earbuds or something, AirPods, something to not have my voice or your voice for that matter come through your room. No one, if there's someone else in the room, they should not hear any of what we talk about from the side from my side. They would hear your voice live, of course, because you're there, but they should not hear me at all. You should be on headphones. So when you're doing a live video with me, most likely you're going to be visible. You're going to be seen. Your face is going to be seen. If you, for some reason, have an issue where you cannot do that, you need to be private, you need to have your face blurred, we'll go through Zoom. We'll do it pre-recorded. And so I'll see your face as we're talking. Then I will go back and as I edit it, I will blur your face out. That's happened only once in the 6 years I've done this. I'm hoping it pretty much never happens again because it's a bit of a pain to do it. But, if there's someone that for privacy's sake just has to do it, that's fine. If you, for some reason, don't feel like you can use your real name, that's fine. You can always, of course, use your just first name and not last. You can also come up with a name. You can use your middle name and only your middle name. It's whatever you want to do. But if you need to be unidentified directly, that's fine. We'll work with whatever you need for privacy's sake. You have to be at home. You can't be in the car. I've had people try to do it in the car on their phone. You can't be at the park. And the reason is you can't control the birds chirping. You can't control the wind that could pick up and all of a sudden it's blowing on your microphone and making it hard. You can't control allergies. You can't control the need for sunglasses because the sun is blinding you. The other cars, if you're in a house, even there's things you need to control, such as if you have pets. You say you have a dog, and the dog is with you in the room, and you have a wooden floor, and their nails, click, 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 click. It's awful. I've had that before. You hear it nonstop. If there's a cat moving around you say you're even at home in your office, if there's a cat moving around and just constantly bumping up against you, we need some kind of way to protect against all those interruptions. It should be a pretty clean shot of you and you alone. And the interruptions should be as controllable as possible. If you're inside, and I would hope you would be, then you need the brightest light to be sort of facing you, but not blinding you. In other words, you don't want your back to the sun. Otherwise, there'll be like a golden glow around you, but you yourself be very dark. You'll be in the shadows. Even if you feel like the room feels bright to you, the camera will interpret it that way. You don't want the light on you so much that you're bleached and blinded by it, but you also don't want to be the opposite where the light is on your back only. So the lighting is an issue. What I would recommend is, if you can, as much as sunlight seems like isn't that the best kind of light, for this kind of stuff, it ironically isn't, in my experience. And what I mean by that is, number one, if we're going to talk for an hour and a half and you have sunlight, and maybe at the beginning of the interview, it's fine. As the sun goes down, potentially, it's not as likely in the summertime, but as the sun goes down, your room, if your room was fine at the beginning, your room may get darker and darker and darker and darker. And I had one video I remember, I'll never forget. She was almost in the dark by the time it was over. But we ended up doing it a little differently, redoing it. But what I would recommend, and what I do, is I have a whole bunch of lights, like the little clip-on lamps you get for teenagers at Walmart for $5. But I've got like 17 of them, 18 of them around me. That's a lot, I know. I've got like 17, 18 lamps clipped on. None of them face me. They all bounce off the walls. And of course, you have to have a sort of a neutral color. I've got a very, very light blue on my office walls, but something very light or white or close to it, off-white. If you were to have, say you had a bold red paint for some reason, and you have the lights bouncing off that, then you're going to obviously have a reddish, pinkish something glow to your face. You don't want that. So that wouldn't work for you. But for people that have a neutral color, you want the lights not facing you, but bouncing off so that the room is illuminated. Now, I do also have one of those big ring lights, and I can see I actually need to crank it up a little bit. But the ring lights are helpful. You don't want it so close to. I see some people where your eyes just look like they're on fire, glowing weirdly. You want it to be somewhat ambient-ish if you can, but those can help a lot. And you could even put it up where it's not even facing you; it's just in the room. I have a light like it's like a shop light that you would put in a garage. It's LED lights. It's huge. It's like 4 foot long. 2 big strips of very bright lights. I mean, you don't even want to look at this thing. It blinds you to look at it. But it's literally like right over there. And I just stand it straight up and down, and I flip it on right before an interview. And I need it because my green screen has to be illuminated. If this green screen is not illuminated, then it looks stinky. Looks weird. So I need a bright light to keep the green screen perfectly detectable by the camera. Do stuff like that. Play with it. Play with it in advance of the interview. Don't say, hey, Tim, I said I'll meet you 15 minutes before the interview, but I'm now realizing as we're like 3 minutes away that maybe it's a little too dark in here. Detecting that it's too dark in here is something you do the day before. So please do check that. I've had that happen more times than I can count. People are adjusting lighting at the very last minute. Of course, you don't want a TV on. No TV, no radio, anything. You want your cell phone muted, and preferably no phone calls or alerts. If you need to check it, as I'm doing for, you've got kids that you could get a phone call from church. I'm sorry, from church. I don't get phone calls from church. It's from school. You get a phone call from the school saying, hey, your kid's sick. You need to pick that up, obviously, but you don't want to be like constantly doing that kind of stuff. Rolla Home says, sup, Tim? Great to see you. I hate God. Hello. And John Metzke, I have no idea what that is, but as long as you keep it under control, I'll let you slide. But we're not doing trolls today, so I'm not sure where you land on that. Anyway, I hate to say it, but you don't want kids around. If you have kids, just give me a heads up. We'll work on it. We'll figure out a way to do it. But if it's like, you really should have someone else in the house watching, or get a babysitter, or do it at a time when they're asleep. We can figure out a time when they're asleep and we're likely to be uninterrupting you. That's fine. We can definitely work with it. But if it's like 90% clear that they're going to walk in and say, mommy, can I please have, a cup of water, glass of water or something, and no one else is around to help them, we need to not do that. We're not going to do it that way. Don't use your kitchen unless it's really clean. I've had people do interviews where they did an interview and they had set up the computer and they had a sink full of dirty dishes right behind them. Unless it's really a clean kitchen, very bright and nice, just stay away from your kitchen as the option for the interview. If you have closets behind you, close the door. We don't need to see all the dirtiness of it. I've had people come on and they've got stuff all over the bureau, stuff, the closet's wide open, stuff's on the floor. I'm like, I'm sorry, but it just looks so messy. Unless you're going to blur that out in some way, don't do that. Bedrooms are sort of hit and miss. If your bedroom again is super clean, you have a nice super clean room behind you, background, that's fine. But if it's messy, an unmade bed, just we're not doing that. We want it to look somewhat professional. If you imagine like getting on camera with your colleagues for an office job, but you're through Zoom or something, you want it like that. You're not going to show up and just kind of be a slob. Same thing. You'd think that some of that is kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised how many times that's come up where just complete chaos behind them and they just don't even care or notice. So I care, and I don't think it's professional. So we'll adjust for that. Fluorescent lights are an option. I don't recommend them because they do sometimes have a flicker that is perceptible by your camera. It can sort of mess things up. So try to not use fluorescent lights if you can. You want to, again, go back to the question of pets. I prefer no dogs, no cats, no animals if possible. Certainly, if you have birds that are going to chirp the whole time, for goodness sake, please don't do the interview until that's resolved. We're not doing interviews with birds chirping every 2 seconds. Your windows, of course, probably need to be closed to avoid noises from cars and lawnmowers. If there's a lawnmower or a blower that comes by and you can't control it, there's nothing you can do about that. We'll just make it work for, hopefully they're done within 3 or 4 minutes in that specific area by your window. But try to, avoid that by just keeping your windows closed. You have to have good internet, of course. You also need to be mindful that even if you have good internet, if there's other people in the house who are taking up excessive bandwidth, that you could still have your video slow down. So try to figure that out. Sometimes people can download things from Netflix or Disney or something, and that way they're not taking up bandwidth during the time that you're on. You want to try to make sure you close some things on your computer if you have anything that's going to take up a lot of bandwidth. If you're a gamer, close any high intense graphics games, things like that. If you wear glasses, you want to try to either avoid them and just not use them during the interview, or do a test to make sure that your lighting is angled in a way that we don't have a glare right on your glasses, We need to see your eyes. I've had people that come on and you can't see their eyes whatsoever. It's just like a big bright light where their eyes are. So think through those kind of things. Test it and say to yourself or just someone else in your house, how does this look? Does this look like I would want to do this way if I was coming on to, do a meeting with my colleagues at work or doing an interview with the evening news? Does this look clean enough? Or does this look kind of like, well, you didn't think through that one? Just work on that. Depth of field is a big deal. If you can, don't do the interview where you have a wall right behind you. If it happens that way and there's no options, then there's no options. Just do what you got to do. But the preference and the ideal is for you to have a large, wide open space behind you. And what you want to do is try to have some sense of darkness right behind you and something light in the background or colorful. So there should be something where people look at you and they tend to look at you and things around you are dark enough that you don't feel like there's a bunch of things right there next to you to look at. But occasionally people are going to just look naturally beyond you, behind your head. And if you have a nice light, you have a nice painting, colorful painting on the background way back there, it's going to have a bokeh effect. It's going to be blurred because it's further back in the distance, most likely, whatever, 10, 20 feet. So you're clear. Your background is fuzzy. Your background is colorful. Your immediate sidebar is a little bit darker. So that's what you're looking for. You don't want to be too close and you don't want to be too far away, right? You want to make sure that you are visible, but you don't want to be so far that you're too far from your microphone, but also you don't want to be super small. You also don't want to be so big that your face just takes up the whole screen. That's a problem. Some people do have software that comes with their camera where you don't need to adjust how far you're sitting. You can just sit where you're going to sit and adjust the settings on the camera and it will zoom in for you. And that's a really good option. You may have an option as well for, a blurred background or depth of field in some way or a green screen effect, even if you don't have a green screen. That's all, play with all those options. See what looks good. Your camera, of course, has to be a decent resolution. If you have a webcam from 1992, maybe it's time to upgrade. They're not that expensive, $20, but get something that's decent. It doesn't have to be 4K or 8K, obviously, but it can't be so fuzzy that it's just like, wow, I don't even know. Didn't know they made cameras that fuzzy anymore. Landscape mode, of course, not portrait. Do not come on and be like that. You have to be like this. We're doing landscape mode. Again, in a pinch, on your cell phone, we might make it work. It certainly comes up all the time in the live streams where people just popping on to make a comment for a minute. But for interviews, landscape mode, not portrait. You need to be able to be centered horizontally and vertically. You don't want to be like this, and you don't want to be like this. You want to basically say like somewhere between your nose and your eyes should be right, bisecting right in the middle. And of course, right down the middle the other way. So that's important. You want the camera parallel to your eyes or close to it. It does not have to be perfect, but it has to be in this range. You don't want it so that you're looking up, and you don't want it so you're looking down where it's looking up your nose. You don't want that. It has to be also fixed where it can't be something where it's wiggly, where at one point you're fine, you're centered, and then it just kind of moves a little bit, and now you're off, and now you got to put your hands all over the device and fix it. We don't want your hands all over the device during the interview. We want it to be set and pretty much one and done. Has to be fixed. If it's a phone, and it's really, you've done a good job, you've propped it up against a wall or a box or something. If you're pretty sure it's not going to move, that's fine. But any chance that it will move, just work on that. See what other options you have. I've had people whose microphones go in and out sporadically. So you want to test yours, of course. You want to make sure that you've got a good connection. I've had people whose microphones make a clicking sound where they're clear when they speak, but you just hear a little something like that. You don't want that. If that happens, on the note of sound, if you're right near a place where there's a dishwasher or a washer and dryer, something, tell the people, or yourself, don't use those till the interview's over. You don't want to hear the washing machine going and beeping. You don't want to sit too far from your microphone, or it's going to sound muffled like you're in a tunnel. You also don't want to be too close, or it's going to be obviously too aggressive. You want to be about an average of 6 to 12 inches away from your microphone, give or take. So do a test run with someone else and see how it sounds. But if you're way too loud, I can turn you down though in StreamYard, but it'd be better if you just come on sort of at the right volume. In terms of the actual interview, I want to go more into less specific and concrete stuff, and I just want to talk about the basic gist of how to do this, how to get yourself in the right mindset. When you're doing your actual interview, you want to think about it. This is your time. This is you. This is your time to tell your story. You can go down memory lane a little bit. You're certainly going to go down memory lane regarding Christianity, but if you're just going down memory lane for the sake of it and it doesn't really connect, just be careful about doing that too much. If you, for example, in your childhood, if you moved 12 times, you could mention that, and that might actually have something to do with your story. You're like, we moved 12 times, and it's interesting as a fact, but also it did something to my walk with God because I was changing churches too, over and over. Weave it in somehow and connect it to your story. But if it's truly irrelevant information, add one or two from time to time, but don't go nuts on it. Like if you're like this one house, the first house we went to, it was so nice. I loved it. It had this, it had that, it had a sunroom and a terrace, backyard. The next house was always cold. It just felt like I had to wear a jacket, just anytime. It's so cold there. The next place was really noisy. We were in the city and so much noise in the cars. That is interesting stuff. But that will be for your memoirs, for your autobiography. This is not your story in general. This is your story as it relates to your deconversion. If you're going to take us away from the main point and say something that sounds irrelevant, the way you do it is you simply preface it and then bring it back. You say, let me tell you something. Something interesting happened when I was 7 years old. Crazy story. And it's going to sound like it has nothing to do with deconstruction, but it actually does. And I'll tell you in a minute why. But just tell you, funny story. Went to the supermarket with my parents and bam, this is what happened. And you fill in all the details. You get to the end of it and you say, the reason I tell you that is, bam, you connect the dots. That's fine. But don't get so rambly and off topic that it's like, I don't know that this has anything to do with deconstruction or deconversion or Christianity or religion. It just sounds like you're just talking. You want to make sure that there's connections there. Stay focused on the big picture. Think of it like you're in a group with maybe 10, 12 people where everyone has a chance to tell their story. Sort of like an AA meeting, I assume. I've never been in one, but I've heard of them. But pretend everyone is there and they really, to some extent, care about your story, and they really care about their chance to tell their story. And you're sitting around in a circle with a group of people, maybe some of them friends or friendly, maybe some of them strangers, but nobody in the room is there to judge you. No one's going to say, hurry up. No one's going to say, shut up. No one's going to say, you're an idiot. They're just going to, like, the rules of the group are, you come in, you wait your turn, and you sit down and you quietly, respectfully listen. That's the rule. That's how the dynamic I want people to feel. Everyone gets a chance to tell their story as slowly and as long as you want. And this is your chance. You've got the floor. Having said that, there's always the caveat, right? Having said that, this is your time. This is your story. Do what you need to do. Having said that, I want to dive into the idea of storytelling just for a minute. You are a storyteller when you tell your story. Obviously, it's your story and you're telling it. But there's a science as well as an art to it. And I'm not saying that to say I've somehow mastered it. I'm never going to say that I'm some kind of guru at this, but I picked up on enough stuff in my time of sharing my story and asking other people about theirs that a lot of people really need to be more aware and self-aware, self-conscious of the fact that you're likely to be more boring than you think. We all are. That's not an attack on you. It's not to say that I'm immune to that. We're all going to be boring at some point. And the more that we can connect to that dynamic and say, how do I avoid being boring, the better. And I'm going to go into some suggestions for that. But I think you still need to start with more of a mentality that says that. I understand. I'm not taking it personally. This group is not attacking me, but they will at some point check out. They will say, I've just been going over the same thing too long. And the way you do that, the way you attack that problem is a couple things. Number one, you keep it moving. You don't linger on the same thing too long. There are times to linger. And again, the way you do that is you preface it. And often you can preface it as well, not just with a literal verbiage of preface, but you can also preface it with a tone. So you can say, Tim, let me tell you a story. Funny thing happened when I was 12 years old. I went to this summer camp, this Christian summer camp. And it was great. Preacher was great. My friends were great. The games were great. The food was awesome. Lovely time. Great memories. Still keep in touch with some of them. And this is right. But then you change your tone and get a little bit more whispery, slow it down, a little quiet. But Tim, something happened. Something happened on that trip. It was a great trip and everyone thought I was doing great. But in my mind, something changed. And then hold it. Just hold that note. Something changed. In that silence, you are grabbing their attention. You are no longer boring because they want to know what changed, what happened on the trip. You're leading me into this. Don't leave me hanging. Tell me the punchline. And then of course, you do tell them the punchline. When you do that, and then once you get done that part, you move it. Okay, I've done that part. Next part. You're avoiding the boredom. You're keeping it moving forward. Now, as you're telling your story, I would recommend that you think of it on two levels. There's the timeline. This happened, then this happened, and this happened, and this happened. That is not what you're trying to do. That is a piece of it. But that is not the goal. You are not successful if you say this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. That's not success. Success is telling what happened on the outside and then explaining what happened on the inside at the same time in tandem. So you say, when I was 6 years old, we were going to church. It was a great church. Loved it. Loved the people. Loved the pastor. Loved the songs. But while I was going there, no one else knew it, but there was another track going on inside my mind. And I was picking up on some stuff, and it took me years to articulate it, but I now know that what was going on at that time while I was just going to church and having a great time was yada yada. And you fill in the blank, and you explain to them what was going on. So you have this top tier that's was visible to your family and friends at that time, and this invisible tier that was not visible to them. It was only visible to you. You're explaining it. That's what you want to do. Because number one, that's your fuller story, but number two, it helps people to see that you're jumping, and we just go back and forth between the different worlds. There's the outer world, the inner world, outer world, inner world. Okay, you switch to a Calvinist church. Okay, how did that affect you? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I was about to tell you, the Calvinist church was just that was the fact of what happened, but the inner world was the real deal. That's the real change. So you do that, and people want to know, and they recognize your cadence. You're going back and forth. You can change that up if it's not the way you would do it, but something where they figure out your pattern, where you're explaining your story and explaining what truly was happening, how that really affected you. Try to be aware of things that are just annoying, and we all are oblivious to them. I'm sure I am. But if you have a repeated phrase that you just know that you say all the time, you say and try to be self-conscious enough to keep it to a minimum. I recommend that as you're thinking through all these things that you do, again, have some notes in front of you. You don't have to look at them much, but some kind of guide that just says, if I get to this point, where am I going next? Oh, that's right. My next bullet point is this. Just a guide. It also helps you know when you're done. You say, yeah, no, I've covered all these. I wanted to cover 12 things and I covered them all. That's it's not a crutch. It was just, I was going to say crutch, but that's a good reference tool for your mind, because you're going to wander. I'm going to ask you questions and you'll be like, that was a good question answer time for a minute, but now I forget where I left off. Where was I? And I'll try not to do that to you. Like, I'm not going to try to get you off track on purpose, but it'll happen. So you want to touch on anyone who is important in your life in the story. You want to explain a context. In other words, if you don't want to You don't want to go through your story and you've mentioned at some point that you are currently married and you've got kids. And then you tell your story and you don't mention one single thing about meeting your spouse and courting them, marriage, and wedding and marriage. Someone as important as your spouse is a major part of your story. And I've had people do that where they told their whole story and they are married, they're still married to the same person, and they did not say a single word about their spouse. Not once, unless I went out of my way to ask. Identify the people that are critical in this. Your parents, your pastor, your teachers, your siblings, your spouse. Weave it in. It doesn't mean you have to tell their story. You don't have to reveal secrets, but just you can be as generic as you want. But if we know that there are major players in your life and you just skip over it all, it makes us wonder, what are you not telling us? I know your spouse is a big deal in this. Were they a Christian? Are they no longer a Christian? Did you all have a chance to talk about deconstruction, or was it a no conversation? It was too embarrassing or too it's going to blow up into an argument if you talked about deconstruction. Who knows? But if that person is like, if you were to say that person is like huge in my life, I don't know how you describe it, like a percentage or something, but they're like 30% of the decision making and importance of my life in terms of all the different circles. My parents are important, my kids are important, my spouse is important. But if you had to slice it up and say, this is a major player, at least weave them in somewhere. I've had that far too often where people just leave off very important people. And honestly, too, you need to remind yourself of that, because some of those people did affect your deconstruction. And if you're focused only on, well, I started watching, YouTube channels where they had academics and it was all about information, you might be tempted to explain it that way and forget that you had a bunch of conversations with your parents or with your siblings, with your spouse, even with your kids, and that did influence you. And you might be tempted to forget, man, I had to confront my parents. They were fundamentalists and they were, spanking the hell out of me as a kid and just making me so ashamed. And eventually I kind of had to have a come to Jesus moment with them and say, Mom and Dad, I'm sorry, I love you, but you traumatized the shit out of me when I was a kid. What if you had that kind of conversation without embarrassing them? Tell us a little bit of how you went back to the people in your life that heavily influenced you and indoctrinated you. What was that like? You don't want to leave out huge chunks of your story, unless it's just for privacy's sake. You just have to, or legal sake, you just have to. Obviously, if there's something for legal sake, protect your ass and do what you got to do. But don't share stories out of school that you're not supposed to tell. But if it's important, bring it up when you can. Try to put yourself in your listener's shoes, and that's part of addressing it from the sake of the boredom factor. But also try to anticipate what would they think? What would you think if you were them? Are you being overly complicated? Are you being overly scatterbrained? Are you kind of all over the place? And you seem like you're talking about when you're 6, and now you're talking about when you're 18, now you're back to 13, then you're back to 21, now you're back to 13 again, 25, 7. Like, it seems a little bit complicated. The timeline shouldn't be that weird. It seems like we're messing this up. Like, why can't we just hear the generic timeline? Put yourself in your listener's shoes and think, what are they going to think about this? Are there too many characters in your specific stories? Now, I talked to Uncle Joe and I talked to Aunt Sally, and she told me to go to Aunt Mary, and she said to go to the pastor, but the pastor, he was out of town that week. So I went to the assistant pastor. He was John Michael. And you're bringing all these characters in. It's like, that's an interesting story, but I don't know who the hell you're talking about now. Who are we talking about? Fascinating to think about. You're trying to get yourself to a point of, I understand that being a storyteller in many ways means listening to myself from their perspective. If you're going, my dad's friend and uncle's cousin, their neighbor, he did this, he did that. Well, who? In terms of breaks, we don't obviously take breaks during the live stream, but there's going to be a couple different ways we could do breaks. So number one, there's going to be just natural pauses where I'm going to reflect and make some comments. That's partly because I actually want to make a comment, but also because it gives you a chance to take a breath and to, if you have to check something on your phone, if you need to, like if your kid's daycare might be calling, check your phone for a second, look down, look at your notes, take a sip of water, whatever it is. I will interrupt in that sense, at the right time, so that we can, make sure that you're good to go. But if you need a bigger break, like a restroom break, just give me a heads up, and then what I'll do is I'll just pull you out of the studio for a minute, and I'll just wax eloquent or ineloquent as the case may be. I'll share something from my heart, maybe relate to one of your stories, and then when you come back, I'll just tell you what I said real quick, and we'll keep going. In terms of pauses and interruptions, rephrasing something you said, it doesn't really apply to live streams, and that's a little bit of a hard thing to swallow, because you need to be able to control your tongue enough, and I'm not talking about like don't curse, but you need to be able to control your tongue enough and or give yourself natural pauses enough that you have time to say, I shouldn't have said that, or it's not coming out right. Live streams, once you say it, it's out there, right? It's done. We can technically edit it later, but at the time, it's still there. It's going to happen where at some point you're going to say, I think I would have said that differently, but you want to just slow down enough that you have enough time to think about how you want this to come out. And if you need to slow down a lot, that's fine. I'd rather you slow down and be happy with the outcome and feel like you're really being yourself, as opposed to saying stuff super quickly and then thinking that that's really not me, or that's a little too me, and now I'm like ashamed of what I said, where I just kind of blurted everything out there. You just be aware. Live streams are a good place for you to learn self-control. If we talk over each other by accident, we'll just step back from that moment, and I'll just say, you go ahead. One of us will start over, and we'll be done. If I ask you a question and you need to think about it for a minute, that's fine. Do not feel the pressure to say, I'm live, I'm on camera, I don't have a good answer, but I got to think of something. No, you're fine. Just be real honest and say, that's a good question. Only think about it for a minute. That's a good one. I'm not even sure if I can answer it off the top of my head. Can we come back to that in a minute or two? Whatever's most comfortable for you, we will do it. We will work on it together, and we will make sure that you are very comfortable when the time comes for you to respond. Nobody's trying to put you in the hot seat here. We're not trying to say, I'm going from playful devil's advocate to I'm getting in your face and trying to make you look bad. No one's trying to make anybody look bad here. We would never want to do that. In terms of your prepared notes, that'll be the driving force, of course, is what you have prepared in your head and or on paper. Because I bounce my questions off of whatever you say, I can't necessarily tell you all the questions I'm going to ask. But by and large, it's going to go something like this. I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to do a bio. We'll say hello. You say hello. I'll do a bio for you, and then we'll work on that beforehand. And then basically, I'd ask you to share something fun and quirky. Say, this is my favorite drink at Starbucks, or, I love being in the gym. I'm in the gym 5 days a week, or something even that hasn't happened yet. Like I've got an aspiration to climb the Alps in the next 2 years. I'm working toward it. Whatever it is, share something fun to break the ice. And then for like the first 30 minutes, we're going to talk about your Christian background. What were your parents like? What did they believe? What did they teach you? What was it like as a child in your home, in your church? And I think that's basically been the best starting point. We've done it that way from the beginning on this channel. It gives you a chance to give us a context for the deconversion that's going to come later in your story. So tell us what your parents were like. You can go back into their story if it's relevant, but don't go too far back. But you could say, something like, yeah, my parents, when they got married, they weren't Christians, but they did become Christians a few years later. And they were, heavily exposed together to a really evangelical Baptist church. And they just got plugged in there. And that's at the time that we kids started to come along. And so even though they didn't grow up in it and they got saved later, we grew up in it. So it was a little different from their experience as kids, whatever. But, give us a little running start to your story where, how do you come into the equation? And then just tell us, what did they teach you? What did you believe? I encourage people to talk about not just what they believed and what they were taught, but also what was it like privately? In other words, you can say this was, we were Baptist and this was our creed kind of stuff. This is how we thought and lived. But at the same time, what was going on deep inside the recesses of your mind? And that's important. So you can talk about your worship of God, like church worship and your worship with other people around. But if you do that, please also weave in, what was it like when it was just you and God in the room? Was it intimate? Did it feel like he was listening? Did it feel like he cared? Or did it feel like you were jumping through hoops? Just, what was it? Work through that for 30 to 45 minutes. Talk through what you believed, and I'll ask you questions. But then eventually we're going to weave toward the point that you say, I did have a point at which I began to have questions. Lead us up to that. Why did you have questions? Was it a friend that asked you something? Was it a church pastor that had a scandal? Was it a class where you learned something? Was it the death of a young person and it didn't seem to make sense? Why would God let this happen? Was it something you just thought through? Philosophy class? What was it? And those are usually things where you would say, those did not deconvert me, but they did start the deconstruction. They just kicked the ball a little bit down the road, and they made me think twice, to the point where I thought to myself, I need to know some more about my worldview and the origins of Christianity or whatever. Take us into that process. What was it like to go through that process where you began to think twice about your worldview? And then move it slowly toward the point where it becomes a bit of a crisis, where you're saying, we have a problem here. I can't move forward, but I also can't move back. I don't know what to do. You're now neck deep in deconstruction. And that's a wonderful, scary place. Been there, done that. And if you're in that right now, just believe me, it does get better, but it can be weird and can be certainly very scary. Thinking I don't really fit in either camp anymore. I'm not really a Christian, but I'm not comfortable calling myself an atheist. So who am I? What do I do now? Who am I? And what are the options? And for a lot of people, that is, again, a very scary place, but it's also a place of incredible opportunity for you to figure out, what is my life about now? Where do I go from here? What a beautiful, beautiful part of life. Scary as it comes. So in terms of, again, going back to the notes, if you're preparing for your interview, be aware of pauses that are too long. It's not as big a deal when it's just recorded. I can edit them out. But if you're the kind of person that tends to answer a question by just saying, let me think about that for a while. Don't leave a big open pause. What you want to do is say, that's a good question. I need a minute to think about it. Can we come back to that in a second? And that way we move on, and you've bought yourself that time to think through it. I encourage people to really dig into what I would simply call the actual reality of their walk with God. Don't just talk about the church. The church said this, the church said that, the pastor thought this, the pastor believed that. This is about God. This is about you and God. So share with us, what were you convinced of? What were you convicted of? Talk about the ways that your love for God evolved, your knowledge of the Bible and of God, your efforts to share the gospel and to save people from hell, the increase in your prayer life and your sincerity, your surrender to God, the increase in your personal holiness. Like, what was it that got you away from certain sins? And when you do that, you are helping people who listen to know, I was not a Christmas and Easter Christian. I really, really, really believed this stuff, and I lived it for years. And the Christians that might eventually watch it, they will be tempted to say, you can't really fall away, so you probably weren't really a Christian in the first place. And you describe your zeal and your passion. Now, they might always say, well, it just doesn't matter what you say. If you fell away, then you weren't really a saved person. And if you're currently blaspheming God, which I gladly am, then therefore you definitely weren't, no true child of God is going to blaspheme his Father, his Heavenly Father. So you get into all those kind of dynamics. You really do. And you need to be at a point where you can talk through your story, explain to them how you really believed it. Now, I am going to be, in those contexts, fielding questions, and I will be judicious because I don't want to ask questions from the audience or myself that throws you off course. But if I have questions where, like, that's really relevant, let's bring that in. I'll obviously find a quiet place to insert that question, and then we'll deal with it. But you want to be able to prove to them, I took baptism seriously. I took prayer seriously. I took the reading of the Word of God seriously. I took evangelism seriously. I took it all very seriously. So talk about how that meant so much to you. Talk about your devotional life. Talk about memorization, Bible studies, your time in church, the Lord's table, choir, anything that says, I believed it and I lived it. I really, really did. Anything. And then when you get to a point where you've exhausted that, and hopefully that's, again, around 30 minutes, 40 minutes at the most. And if you're not there yet, just move along. But by 30 to 45 minutes, you need to be moving into your deconversion pretty heavily. At that point, you want to say to people, effectively, like, this was a great, great thing with me and God. But then, little did I know. And explain at that juncture what changed. And so you might say, it was so beautiful. I loved the Lord. I was growing in the knowledge of my salvation. And I felt like it couldn't have gotten better. It couldn't have gotten better. But little did I know what was about to happen. What was about to happen was that there were 3 critical questions that I began to ask. Didn't even know how they got in my head, but 3 critical questions popped up. And when I asked them, every answer I came up with was garbage. And I knew it. I knew it through and through, that these answers are not feasible and defensible. And that's where this began. And let me tell you what those 3 questions were. And to say, as I go through these 3 questions, that's what started my deconstruction. These questions were good ones. I needed good questions, and I needed to honestly face them. And I finally did. And that's what happened. Of course, beware of, kids might be watching. So, watch your language a little bit. You're allowed to curse on the channel, but don't go overboard. If you're just trying to drop F-bombs all over the place, save those till the interview's over. Be aware, of course, anything that's overtly sexual. I know most of the time, if you were to do something like that, it would be to explain like childhood sexual abuse or something like that. But avoid anything that's overly sexual. Again, we may have children that, intentionally or accidentally are listening. And so if you want to talk about something that's explicit, you're going to have to not do it, basically, because we're going to need to be aware of the kids that might listen and just, be careful. Mild cursing is okay. But if you're someone who just curses nonstop, like in Good Will Hunting, you're going to have to dial it back. You're just going to have to. And also, since it's live, I can't be like, well, he curses a lot, but I can probably cleanly edit out, 10% or 20% of those. In live streams, it's out there. Again, you want to keep it moving. You want to make sure you're coming to a conclusion. A good story, I'm going to stand up here. A good story obviously has a good conclusion. And so you want to get to a point where you are saying to yourself, in your mind, I need to end this with a bang. I need to say, we built up to this huge crescendo of, is it real? Is it not? Is it reality? Is it not? And let me tell you, Tim, what happened next was, bam. Explain it with zeal in your heart, a sparkle in your eyes, and let people know that you have a story to tell, and it ends in an amazing, crazy way. It really does. So I'm going to take a quick stop from the live stream and go to a question that came in. Mary Lux, Venoria, what about being agnostic and being converted back to believing in God by total mistake? That's a good question. I'm not sure how you would do it by total mistake, but I don't want to get off topic here. This is more about preparing to share your deconversion interview story. But just to give you a quick sidebar answer, like always, if someone believes anything, may replace that with, I became utterly convinced that Iron Man is not mythology, that Iron Man is real, or that aliens are real. You can make the claim, but it's an extraordinary claim, which requires extraordinary evidence. So tell us what that was like. What's the evidence? How do you know that God exists? Or how are you very, very convinced? And we'll listen to it. But that kind of person who's in that spot would not be a good candidate for my channel. So would not be a good candidate for an interview at all. So that kind of resolves that issue. Please be thinking of a title for your video. We can change it after the fact, but be thinking of a title, preferably a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas. But you want to give me some kind of sense of what would encapsulate your life story. You can look through the other titles I've got on my channel from the earlier interviews. Say maybe a variation on one of those themes would help. But think about that. I may or may not go with your choice for the title, but certainly try to respect it, or at least the dynamics of it. In terms of the titles, there's 2 titles we're looking at. One of them is the longer one, that's the whole title. The other one is the actual short title that we'll use for the thumbnail. Sometimes you match them up, but the thumbnail has to be shorter because it's just a picture. There's not that much space in it. You want the title to be punchy and powerful and reflective of your journey and of where you've landed. So your thumbnail photo, your picture that you're going to send me, you can send me several just to give me some options. It should be like professional. It should look good. It should flatter you in some way. It should be waist up, nothing cut off, no elbows cut off, no hands, no shoulders cut off, no hair cut off. Just feel like I'm playing head and shoulders, knees and toes here. But you need to make sure that you're not cut off. I prefer waist up, no words in it like Nike or Adidas. Just a plain outfit, nothing too flashy. And I will cut out the background and then put you in front of a lake or a stream or something, and that'll be that. And I'll put the words up. Of course, no sunglasses, no hats, nothing like that. So make it high resolution if you can. If you don't have one, try to take a picture, have someone take a picture of you in high resolution. The earlier the better. I don't like to scramble at the last minute if I can help it. And let's see here. In terms of tagging, I can tag you on Facebook if you want to be tagged. I can probably try to tag you on some other platforms maybe. But I do tag people on Facebook only if they request it, only if they're fine with it. I sometimes ask, but they give permission. If you need to make last minute changes to the interview, like you need to just change days, like something happened, my kid was fine and now they're throwing up all over the place. I cannot do this. I gotta focus on them. That's fine. We'll reschedule it. It's not an issue for me. I may replace it and come on and just do some kind of live stream where I just talk. But in terms of your interview, we'll fix it. To focus on your loved ones, focus on what's important. Don't feel any guilt about that. When it's all done, I recommend that you do check the videos at least maybe once a week. Look for comments. You may find comments have come in that you might want to respond to, at least for maybe the first month or two. So, and if you feel like the interview goes well, but there's still a lot unsaid, let me know and say, hey, can we do this again in 2 or 3 months? Let's do a follow-up and let's do part 2. I've got more to say. That sounds great to me. No problem. Don't feel nervous. It's just you and me and the whole world. No, just kidding. Don't feel nervous. You get used to live streams. You get used to being on camera. It just takes a minute. It just takes, but it's no big deal. Prepare yourself emotionally. Some people can be more matter of fact. It's just this happened, then this happened, then this happened, end of story. Someone else is going to tell the same timeline and they're going to cry through it because it broke their heart so much. So prepare yourself, especially the triggers. Don't be ashamed or apologetic for your emotions. There might be times when you get really upset going through a certain period of your story. That's normal, and we would never want you to feel like you're, somehow stepping out of character into some weird character. Just be yourself and you'll be fine. And if tears come or something like it, that's fine. I recommend, just separately from all I've said, I recommend that you do give yourself some downtime after the interview to decompress. Some interviews get intense, not to say that they're attacking or anything, but some interviews can be intense because of the topics. You might need to decompress. You might need to. That's okay. So, and of course, when you do an interview with me, be prepared in advance for backlash from Christians. Now, I will protect the comment section if a comment comes in and just says, hey, my name is John, I'm a believer, and you all are wrong. You're going to burn in hell for this. They're kind of attacking you, but it's generic enough that they're just attacking the channel, really. I'll just delete and block that person. That's not a big deal. But don't let the backlash get to you. Christians are already in a backlash phase. They just need the fodder, and the video like these gives them the fodder. So don't take it too seriously. A couple things, disqualifiers. Obviously, if you come and you're not well dressed to some extent, reasonably nice. If you make a bunch of snarky comments about people, if you say, yeah, that person you had on the other day, it was interesting to hear their stuff, but man, they just spoke like an idiot. It's like, nah, that's not how we're going to talk on this channel. We might have to end it. If you have some weird stuff about your beliefs, if you're a flat earther, if you're a misogynist, if you're a climate change denier, if you're a MAGA, tell me that in advance, please. I'd like to know in advance. That will change the way that we decide if you're a good fit or not. If for some reason there's an issue, we can always do a second one. Let's say you get to the end. It's been maybe an hour, 3/4, 2 hours, and you're like, you know what? I thought that was plenty of time, but I just feel like I could just go on for another hour. We'll do a follow-up. It's not a problem. Well, not a problem. When you are fielding questions from the field, which I'll read off to you, keep it short. Keep your answers short, but try to answer them as best as you can. If you can, again, write down some thoughts and some notes. If you have some kind of preparation there at that point where you're like, I might stumble at a certain point or forget where I left off. If you have the preparation in the notes, that's worth its weight in gold. Even if you don't look at it, it's nice to just know it's there. Sort of back of mind issue. A few more quick notes here, and then we'll wrap up for this one. We'll be back on in a couple hours, but don't see this as too casual of a retelling. I want you to see me as my friend, but also you're in front of a whole bunch of people, or at least you will be by the time the replay comes. Think of it as serious. Don't act like we're just buddies hanging out and you can just kind of proverbially slouch down and tell your story. Like, keep it seriously. Keep it serious. Pretend that there are people in the room with us, and pretend some of them you've never seen before, because there probably eventually will be as they watch the replay. Take it seriously. Beware of endless rabbit trails and then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened. And like, just be aware of yourself. We're looking for high points that we can connect dots on. There will be tons of stories that you will have to just ignore. That's par for the course. You're going to have to decide this story makes the point the most. This other story tells it really well too, but I'm only going to go with one of them. There's a lot more I could go through, but I think I've covered a lot, and it has been an hour. So I'll just say this. Be brave in your story. Be bold. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. People need to hear your story, and your story can become someone's survival manual. So do a good job. Explain it all. Tell how you survived. Tell how you got out. And just know and believe that you will make a difference to some people. Not everybody. Some people will not feel like you did a good job, but someone else will say you did a great job. Some people will say they can't relate to you, and the next person will say, I can relate to them better than anybody else that's ever been on this channel. Nature of the beast, but do what you can, and just let it fall where it may. So in terms of the interviews, again, if you do want to do an interview and you have not reached out to me yet, my Facebook handle, I'll put it here on Facebook, again, is @HarmonicTim. So add me on Facebook so I can see your face and get to know you a little bit that way. And then tell me, I want to do an interview. Is there a time slot that works for you? And we'll figure it out. I would love to see more and more people. No pressure. If it's not the right time, don't feel any obligation. But when the time is right, I would love to have a whole slew of people that just overwhelms me with how many people want to jump on ASAP and say, I get it, that my story is going to become someone else's survival manual, and I made it, and it was hard, but I got through it. And I know that the next person might be going through it double, and it might be harder. I want to be available to help those people. If you want to share your story, if that sounds like you, please let me know. We'll figure out a time. We'll get the link set up. We'll have you jump in. We'll make sure that we have the bio from you and the pictures, and then we'll go through it all, and you can share your story. So that's a lot. I could honestly talk another hour or two about it. Maybe I'll make a follow-up at some point, but that's a lot to think about so far, a lot to digest. So take that for what it's worth. If it all sounds like old news, then you pretty much you would have done all that and thought all that anyway. Then maybe for some people you're already ready, and then that means reach out to me. That's a good thing. Reach out to me. Tell me that you're feeling comfortable. And then for anyone else that feels like they need some more time to think about it, that's fine too. But when the time is right, let me know. And usually within maybe a week to 2 weeks, we'll find a date. You'll come on 15 minutes earlier. We'll jump in, we'll test it really fast, and then we'll be live to the world. People will ask us some questions. I will protect you. I will be the MC of the night, and we'll make sure that your story gets the full attention it deserves by you telling it. I'll make some observations throughout the time, but I'm not trying to distract anybody from you. They're just observations to give you a break, and then your story becomes someone else's survival manual. How cool is that? It's an amazing journey. So again, I think I've covered a lot. Got a lot more notes here. I'm not going to read through them all in my mind here, but a lot of notes, a lot of things I could add, but I think I've gone over the basics. I think there's a lot of things that, as long as you get the basics down there, everything else will fall in place. You'll be fine. Don't be afraid. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, as they say. And be brave. And when the time is right, trust yourself. But when the time is right for you to share your story, let me know, and we'll get you scheduled. We'll do a test of some kind, and then we'll proceed. And then you're live to the world. You're live to the world, and you get to tell your story. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful process. I love it. I love being able to take people from all this pain and grief and trauma to, hey, to the next person in line, to whom I'm going to effectively pass the baton. You're in a hard spot. I'm a few steps ahead of you. Let me help you survive this. Let me help you get ahead. That's what this is about. We are a community. We will build up the weak. We will help the weak get through this. We will help the new people who have no idea how to live through deconstruction, how to live through it and thrive eventually. So thank you all for being a part of my journey, for being a part of my world. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being able to help with this very difficult topic in a sense of how to prepare. But I hope that some of this has helped you. And honestly, I just can't wait. I can't wait to see people reach out. If you can't reach out to me on Facebook, which is fine, my email address is HarmonicAtheist@yahoo.com. And you're welcome to email me, although I prefer to see a face so I can put a face to a name. But let me know when you're ready, and we'll get started. And then you'll be able to share your story, and hopefully it'll be a great experience for you, and a great experience for the people watching, and a testimony to the saved world. I was going to say to the lost world, the saved, but even though they're actually lost, to the saved world, that there is another side to this, and that the other side is a lot less toxic and a lot more real. So anyway, thank you so much. I'll be back online tonight. Please jump in if you can. It's a call-in open mic. I'd love to have you. And thank you all so much for being here. And for anyone that's watching the replay, hope it's helpful. Reach out to me. Let's get you set up. Let's get you on the channel. Let's get everybody to know you. Of course, I should say, if you have a platform of your own, make sure you give me all the links as we get to the point of your interview. That way we can plug your channel or whatever and drive traffic to what you're doing. So anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. Talk to you soon.